The fluorescent lights of Roosevelt High School's main hallway buzzed with their familiar electric hum, casting that harsh, unforgiving glow that seemed to highlight every flaw. Marcus Thompson adjusted his worn-out backpack straps for the 100th time that morning, the frayed edges a constant reminder of his family's financial struggles. The September air in Detroit carried that familiar bite of approaching autumn, seeping through the school's old windows and mixing with the scent of industrial cleaner and teenage anxiety. "Marcus, wait up!" The voice belonged to his best friend Jake, whose sneakers squeaked against the polished linoleum as he jogged to catch up. Jake's enthusiasm was infectious, even at 7:30 in the morning, his curly red hair still damp from his rushed shower. "Dude, did you finish the chemistry homework? Mrs. Patterson is going to kill us if we don't have it." Marcus nodded, pulling out a slightly crumpled worksheet from his folder. His handwriting was neat, precise, the kind that came from years of being meticulous about schoolwork because it was the one thing he could control. "Yeah, I stayed up until midnight working on it. Question 15 was brutal." As they walked toward their lockers, Marcus's eyes inevitably drifted toward the popular kids section of the hallway. There, surrounded by her usual entourage of perfectly styled friends, stood Jessica Martinez. Her long dark hair caught the morning light streaming through the windows, and her laugh, that musical sound that had haunted his dreams since sophomore year, echoed above the general chatter of students. Jessica had been his lab partner in biology last year, and for those 50 minutes every Tuesday and Thursday, Marcus had allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone like her could see something worthwhile in someone like him. She was smart, not just pretty, but genuinely intelligent, with aspirations of becoming a veterinarian. She volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends and had this way of explaining complex concepts that made everything seem simple. "Earth to Marcus," Jake nudged him with his elbow. "You're doing that thing again, where you stare at Jessica like a lost puppy." Heat crept up Marcus's neck, spreading across his cheeks. "I'm not staring." "Right, and I'm not failing calculus." Jake spun the combination on his locker with practiced ease. "Why don't you just talk to her? The worst she can do is say no." But Marcus knew it could be worse than that, much worse. The memory hit him like a physical blow, as vivid as if it had happened yesterday instead of 3 months ago. It was the last day of junior year, and he had finally worked up the courage to ask Jessica to prom. He had planned it carefully, waiting until after their final biology exam when she was in a good mood, having aced the test with typical Jessica confidence. "Hey, Jessica," he had said, his voice barely above a whisper as she packed up her textbooks. "I was wondering if maybe you'd like to go to prom with me." The silence that followed felt eternal. Jessica had looked up from her bag, her dark eyes meeting his with an expression he couldn't quite read. Around them, other students were celebrating the end of exams, their voices creating a backdrop of joy that made the moment feel even more surreal. "Marcus," she had said finally, her voice gentle but firm. "You're really sweet and you're obviously smart, but..." She paused, glancing around as if looking for the right words. "I just don't see us together like that. You're going to community college, right? And then probably some local job? I have big plans, you know? I want to see the world, make something of myself." The words that came next were the ones that replayed in his mind every single night since then. "I need someone who matches my ambition. Someone who's going places. No offense, but I don't think you'll ever be anyone important enough for me to be with." She hadn't meant to be cruel. Marcus could see that in her eyes even as the words left her mouth, but intention didn't soften the impact. The rejection wasn't just about prom. It was about his entire future, his worth as a person, his potential in life. She had looked at him and seen nothing. "Marcus, seriously, man, you're freaking me out." Jake's voice snapped him back to the present. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Marcus lied, slamming his locker door harder than necessary. The metallic cling echoed down the hallway, drawing a few curious glances from nearby students. "Just tired." The truth was that Jessica's words had been eating away at him all summer. While other kids his age were working summer jobs at the mall or lifeguarding at the community pool, Marcus had spent his days in his bedroom, hunched over his laptop, teaching himself video editing software and music production programs. What had started as a distraction from heartbreak had slowly evolved into something else, a passion he didn't even know he possessed. It began with a simple YouTube channel where he posted videos of himself playing guitar covers of popular songs. His voice wasn't spectacular, but it was honest, raw in a way that seemed to resonate with people. The first video got 12 views. The second got 37. By the end of July, he was getting hundreds of views per video, and the comment section was filled with people asking for more. "You should really consider original music," one commenter had written. "You have something special." That comment had changed everything. Marcus started writing his own songs, pouring his heartbreak and frustration into lyrics that spoke about feeling invisible, about being underestimated, about the burning desire to prove everyone wrong. His bedroom became a makeshift studio, with blankets hung on the walls for sound dampening, and his phone propped up on a stack of textbooks to record. "Hey, loser." The voice cut through his thoughts like a knife. Brad Henderson, Jessica's current boyfriend and the starting quarterback for Roosevelt's football team, appeared beside his locker with that trademark smirk that made Marcus's stomach churn. Brad was everything Marcus wasn't: tall, athletic, confident, and from a family wealthy enough to guarantee his acceptance to whatever college he chose. "Not now, Brad," Marcus muttered, trying to shoulder past him. But Brad wasn't finished. "I heard you asked my girl to prom last year. That's hilarious, man. What did you think was going to happen? That she'd suddenly develop a taste for poverty and mediocrity?" Jake stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Back off, Henderson." Brad laughed, the sound echoing off the lockers. "Relax, Red. I'm just having a conversation with our friend Marcus here." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Marcus could hear. "Jessica told me what she said to you, about never being anyone important. Smart girl, my Jessica. She knows quality when she sees it." The bell rang, signaling the start of first period, and Brad clapped Marcus on the shoulder with false friendliness before sauntering away to join Jessica and her friends. Marcus watched as Jessica glanced in his direction, her expression unreadable, before turning away and laughing at something one of her friends said. "Don't let him get to you," Jake said quietly. "Brad Henderson peaks in high school. We both know that." But as Marcus walked toward his first period English class, Brad's words mixing with the echo of Jessica's rejection from months ago, he felt something shift inside him. The hurt was still there, sharp and persistent, but alongside it was something new, a burning determination that surprised him with its intensity. That afternoon, Marcus would go home and upload his latest video to YouTube. It was an original song called Invisible, and by the end of the week, it would have over 10,000 views. By the end of the month, a small record label in Nashville would reach out to him through email, asking if he was interested in discussing his future. But Marcus didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was that Jessica Martinez had looked at him and seen nothing, and that somehow that nothing was going to become everything. 3 months had passed since that humiliating encounter with Brad in the hallway, and Marcus's life had taken on a strange double existence. By day, he remained the invisible kid at Roosevelt High School, blending into the background like wallpaper that no one bothered to notice. But by night, in the sanctuary of his small bedroom on Detroit's East Side, he was becoming someone entirely different. The November air carried the first real bite of winter as Marcus walked home from school, his breath forming small clouds in the crisp afternoon air. The neighborhood around him told the story of a city fighting to rebuild itself. Some houses showed fresh paint and renewed hope, while others bore the scars of economic hardship with boarded windows and overgrown yards. His family's modest 2-story home sat somewhere in between, maintained with love, but clearly showing the strain of his father's unemployment and his mother's double shifts at the diner. "Marcus, honey, is that you?" His mother's voice called from the kitchen as he climbed the creaking stairs to his room. Linda Thompson was a woman who had learned to stretch every dollar and find joy in small victories. Her graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her diner uniform already laid out for her evening shift. "Yeah, Mom. Just going to do homework," he called back, the familiar lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. The truth was far more complicated than homework, and Marcus wasn't ready to share it with anyone, not even his parents. His bedroom was a testament to creative resourcefulness. The walls were lined with thick blankets and old comforters, creating a makeshift recording studio that dampened sound and prevented his activities from disturbing the neighbors. A simple desk held his laptop, a second-hand Dell that his aunt had given him for his 17th birthday, along with a USB microphone he'd saved 3 months to buy, and his acoustic guitar, a gift from his grandfather before he passed away. Marcus settled into his desk chair and opened his laptop, the familiar blue glow illuminating his face in the dimly lit room. His YouTube channel, Marcus T Music, had grown beyond his wildest expectations. What had started as 12 views on his first video had exploded into something he could barely comprehend. His latest upload, a raw, emotional song called Prove Them Wrong, had garnered over 50,000 views in just 2 weeks. The comments section had become his daily dose of validation and connection with people who understood his struggles. "Dude, your music literally saved my life. I was about to drop out of school, but your songs made me realize I'm not alone." Sarah, AM 2007. "This is what real music sounds like, not the manufactured garbage on the radio. Keep going, man." Detroit Dreamer. "I showed this to my entire class. You're going to be famous one day, I can feel it." Music Lover NYC. Each comment felt like a small miracle, proof that his voice mattered to someone somewhere, but it was the email notification that popped up on his screen that made his heart nearly stop beating. From jennifer.hayes.summitrecords.com. Subject, your YouTube channel, business inquiry. Date, November 15th, 4:23 p.m. "Hello, Marcus. My name is Jennifer Hayes, and I'm a talent scout for Summit Records in Nashville. I've been following your YouTube channel for the past month, and I'm incredibly impressed with your original compositions and authentic vocal style. We would be interested in discussing potential opportunities with you. Would you be available for a phone call sometime this week? Best regards, Jennifer Hayes, Talent Acquisition Summit Records." Marcus read the email 3 times before the words fully sank in. A record label, a real record label, wanted to talk to him. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone to call Jake, then stopped. What if this was a joke? What if someone from school had found his channel and was playing an elaborate prank? He Googled Summit Records Nashville and found a legitimate website with real artists, real albums, and real success stories. Jennifer Hayes was listed on their staff page, her professional headshot accompanied by a bio detailing her 15 years in the music industry. This was real. The sound of the front door opening downstairs interrupted his racing thoughts. His father's heavy footsteps echoed through the house, followed by the familiar ritual of checking the mail and settling into his worn recliner with a tired sigh. Robert Thompson had been laid off from the automotive plant 8 months ago, and despite sending out dozens of resumes every week, the interviews were few and the rejections were many. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He picked up his phone and dialed the number in Jennifer's email signature. "Summit Records, Jennifer Hayes speaking. Hi, Ms. Hayes, this is Marcus Thompson. You sent me an email about my YouTube channel." "Marcus, I was hoping you'd call today." Her voice was warm, professional, with a slight southern accent that immediately put him at ease. "I have to tell you, your music has been the talk of our office. Invisible made our head of A&R cry actual tears." "Really?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly, betraying his 17 years. "Really? Tell me, Marcus, how old are you?" 17. I'm a senior in high school." "And you wrote all those songs yourself?" "Yes, ma'am. I taught myself guitar when I was 13, and I've been writing songs for about 2 years now." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Marcus could hear the faint sounds of an office, phones ringing, conversations in the background, the hum of productivity and possibility. "Marcus, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you can handle it. You have something special. Your lyrics speak to a generation of kids who feel overlooked and undervalued. Your melodies are simple but powerful, and your voice has this quality that makes people want to listen." Marcus felt like he was floating, like the entire conversation was happening to someone else. "Here's what I'd like to propose," Jennifer continued. "We'd like to fly you to Nashville next month to meet with our team. All expenses paid, of course. We're not making any promises, but we'd like to explore the possibility of working together." I don't know what to say. Say yes, Marcus. Say yes and let us help you turn your dreams into reality. After hanging up the phone, Marcus sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Outside his window, Detroit was settling into evening, streetlights beginning to flicker on as the November darkness crept across the city. Somewhere across town, Jessica Martinez was probably doing homework or getting ready for a date with Brad, completely unaware that the boy she had dismissed was about to prove her spectacularly wrong. He thought about her words from that day in biology class. I don't think you'll ever be anyone important enough for me to be with. Marcus smiled for the first time in months, a real smile, full of possibility and quiet determination. Soon, Jessica Martinez would know exactly who Marcus Thompson was becoming. 2 weeks after the phone call that changed everything, Marcus found himself on a plane to Nashville, staring out the small window at clouds that looked like cotton balls scattered across an endless blue canvas. He had never been on a plane before, never been outside of Michigan, and certainly never imagined he'd be traveling as the guest of a record label. The trip had required careful orchestration. He'd told his parents he was visiting Jake's cousin in Nashville for the weekend, a lie that sat heavy in his stomach but felt necessary until he knew what this opportunity might become. His mother had packed him sandwiches and worried about him traveling alone, while his father had slipped him $50 just in case, money Marcus knew they couldn't spare. Summit Records occupied 3 floors of a sleek building in Music Row, Nashville's legendary heart of country music. The lobby walls were covered with gold and platinum records, each one representing dreams realized and lives changed. Marcus clutched his guitar case tighter as Jennifer Hayes approached him with a warm smile, her professional demeanor somehow managing to be both impressive and comforting. "Marcus, you look exactly like I imagined from your videos," she said, extending her hand. "How was the flight?" "Amazing," he replied honestly. "I've never flown before." "Well, that's about to be the first of many firsts," Jennifer said with a knowing smile. "Come on, let's introduce you to some people who are very excited to meet you." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of meetings, introductions, and surreal moments that Marcus would replay in his mind for years to come. He met the head of A&R, a soft-spoken woman named Patricia, who told him his song, Invisible, had made her think of her own teenage son. He sat in a professional recording studio that cost more than his family's annual rent and played 3 of his original songs for a room full of industry professionals who listened with the kind of attention he'd never experienced before. "Your authenticity is remarkable," said David, the label's creative director. "In an industry full of manufactured personas, you're telling real stories that matter to real people." But it was the conversation with Jennifer in her office afterward that truly changed Marcus's trajectory. "Marcus, I'm going to be completely transparent with you," she said, settling into her chair across from him. "We want to offer you a development deal." "What does that mean?" "It means we believe in your potential enough to invest in your growth. We'd provide you with professional songwriting sessions, studio time, and marketing support to help build your audience. In return, we get the first option on signing you to a full recording contract when you turn 18. Marcus felt like the room was spinning. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. There would be a signing bonus, enough to help your family while you finish high school." And Marcus, she leaned forward, her expression intense. "Based on what I've seen today, I think we're looking at the beginning of something very special." The flight back to Detroit felt shorter than the trip down, Marcus's mind racing with possibilities and plans. He had signed the development deal, the contract tucked safely in his backpack, along with a check that would change his family's immediate circumstances. But more than the money, it was the validation that mattered. Proof that Jessica Martinez had been catastrophically wrong about his potential. School on Monday felt like returning to a different planet. The hallways of Roosevelt High seemed smaller somehow, the drama more trivial, the social hierarchies less intimidating. Marcus moved through his classes with a secret that burned bright in his chest, a knowledge that separated him from everyone around him. It was during lunch that everything changed. Marcus was sitting at his usual table with Jake, picking at a sandwich his mother had packed, when he noticed the commotion near Jessica's table. A group of students had gathered around someone's phone, their excited voices carrying across the cafeteria. "Oh my God, this is so good! Wait, play it again! Who is this guy? He's incredible!" Jake nudged Marcus with his elbow. Sounds like someone discovered a new artist, probably some TikTok sensation. But Marcus's blood ran cold as he heard a familiar melody drifting from the phone's speaker. His melody. Someone was playing Prove Them Wrong, his latest upload that had exploded to over 200,000 views over the weekend. "I need to hear this," said a voice that made Marcus's heart stop. Jessica Martinez was approaching the group, her curiosity piqued by the gathering crowd. The student holding the phone, Marcus recognized him as Tommy Chen from his chemistry class, eagerly obliged. "Check this out, Jess. This guy's channel is called Marcus T Music, and his songs are like life-changing. Listen to these lyrics." Marcus's own voice filled the cafeteria space around Jessica's table. "They said I'd never be nothing, just a shadow on the wall. But shadows grow longer when the sun begins to fall. I'm writing my own story now. With every word I sing, watch me prove them wrong. Watch me spread my wings." The color drained from Jessica's face as the song continued. Marcus watched, frozen in his seat, as recognition dawned in her dark eyes. She grabbed Tommy's phone, scrolling through the video with frantic intensity. "What's the channel called again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus T Music. The guy's got like 500,000 subscribers. Started posting just a few months ago, but he's blowing up everywhere. My sister says he's going to be the next big thing." Jessica's hands were shaking as she handed the phone back to Tommy. Her eyes swept across the cafeteria until they found Marcus, sitting frozen at his table 30 feet away. For a moment their gazes locked, and Marcus saw something in her expression he'd never seen before. Surprise, recognition, and what might have been regret. "Jessica, you okay?" one of her friends asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." But Jessica wasn't listening. She was staring at Marcus with the dawning realization that the boy she had dismissed, the boy she had told would never be anyone important, was already becoming someone she couldn't ignore. Brad Henderson appeared at Jessica's side, following her gaze to Marcus's table. "What are you looking at, babe?" "Nothing," Jessica said quickly, but her voice lacked conviction. "Just nothing." Marcus stood up slowly, his legs unsteady beneath him. The secret was out now, or at least it was beginning to unravel. Jake looked at him with confusion, clearly sensing something significant was happening, but not understanding what. "Marcus," Jake whispered, "what's going on? Why is Jessica staring at you like that?" But Marcus was already walking away, his mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. The invisible boy was becoming visible, whether he was ready or not. As he pushed through the cafeteria doors into the hallway, he could hear the buzz of conversation exploding behind him. By the end of the day, everyone at Roosevelt High School would know that Marcus Thompson, quiet, overlooked, supposedly unremarkable Marcus Thompson, was the voice behind the songs that were capturing hearts across the country. The boy Jessica Martinez said would never be anyone was about to become someone she couldn't forget. 6 months had passed since that life-altering day in the cafeteria, and Marcus Thompson's world had transformed beyond recognition. The development deal with Summit Records had blossomed into a full recording contract the day he turned 18, and his debut single, Invisible, had climbed to number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. What started as a bedroom recording in Detroit had become a phenomenon that resonated with millions of young people who felt overlooked and underestimated. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that he was now anything but invisible. Roosevelt High School's auditorium buzzed with an energy that had never existed within its walls before. The building, which had seen decades of graduation ceremonies, talent shows, and community meetings, was about to host something unprecedented, a homecoming concert by its most famous graduate. The local news crews had been setting up since dawn, and students who had never acknowledged Marcus's existence were now wearing Marcus T Music t-shirts and claiming they'd always known he was destined for greatness. Marcus stood in the makeshift backstage area, really just the drama department's storage room, adjusting his guitar strap and trying to process the surreal nature of returning to the place where he'd felt so small just months before. His manager, a sharp-witted woman named Carol, who'd been Jennifer Hayes' recommendation, paced nearby while talking rapidly into her phone about interview schedules and security protocols. "Marcus, you've got about 10 minutes before we need you out there," Carol said, ending her call. "How are you feeling? How are..." Like I'm in someone else's life, he admitted, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Through the storage room's small window, Marcus could see the auditorium filling with faces both familiar and strange. There were classmates who had never spoken to him, teachers who had barely noticed him, and parents who were probably wondering how they'd missed the signs of his talent. But it was the figure in the third row that made his heart race. Jessica Martinez sitting alone, her dark hair catching the stage lights as she stared at the empty stage with an expression he couldn't quite read. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of studio sessions, interviews, and performances. But Marcus had never stopped thinking about the girl who had unwittingly provided the fuel for his fire. He'd heard through Jake that she and Brad had broken up shortly after Marcus's identity became public knowledge, and that she'd been accepted to veterinary school at Michigan State University. But beyond those scattered details, she remained a mystery, the person who had shaped his journey without knowing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Principal Rodriguez's voice echoed through the auditorium's sound system. Please welcome Roosevelt High School's own Marcus Thompson. The roar that greeted Marcus as he walked onto the stage was deafening. Students, teachers, and community members rose to their feet in thunderous applause, their faces glowing with pride and excitement. For a moment, Marcus stood frozen at center stage, his guitar in his hands, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "I have to admit, this is pretty surreal. The last time I was on this stage, I was playing a tree in the third-grade production of Our Forest Friends." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Marcus felt some of his nervousness ease. These were his people, his community, and despite everything that had changed, this was still home. "I want to start tonight with the song that started it all," Marcus continued. "This is invisible, and it's for everyone who's ever felt like their voice didn't matter." As the first chords rang out, a hush fell over the auditorium. Marcus's voice, now trained and polished, but still carrying that raw authenticity that had first captured hearts, filled the space with lyrics that spoke to the deepest insecurities and highest aspirations of teenage life. Midway through the song, his eyes found Jessica in the crowd. She was crying, not the dramatic tears of someone seeking attention, but the quiet, honest tears of someone genuinely moved. When their eyes met, she mouthed 2 words that hit him harder than any applause. "I'm sorry." The concert continued for 45 minutes, with Marcus performing songs that chronicled his journey from rejection to recognition. He told stories between songs, sharing the struggles and triumphs that had brought him to this moment. The audience hung on every word, laughing at his jokes and singing along to lyrics they'd memorized from countless YouTube replays. "Before I finish tonight," Marcus said as the concert neared its end, "I want to talk about something important. A lot of people think this story is about revenge, about proving someone wrong, but that's not what this is about at all." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd before settling once again on Jessica. "This story is about what happens when we let other people's limited vision of us define our own possibilities. Someone once told me I'd never be anyone important enough to matter. At the time, those words crushed me, but they also saved me because they forced me to ask myself a question. What if she's wrong?" The auditorium was completely silent now, everyone hanging on his words. The truth is, that person wasn't cruel. She was just 17 years old and trying to figure out her own life. We all were. But her words taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. The only person who gets to decide your worth is you. Marcus strummed his guitar gently, the soft chords providing a backdrop for his final thoughts. "So this last song isn't called I Told You So or Look at Me Now. It's called Thank You, because sometimes the people who doubt us give us the greatest gift of all, the motivation to prove ourselves wrong about our own limitations." As Marcus launched into his final song, a beautiful acoustic ballad about gratitude and growth, Jessica quietly stood up from her seat. But instead of leaving, she moved closer to the stage, joining the crowd of students who had gathered at the front. When the song ended and the applause erupted, she was among the first to stand, her tears now mixed with something that looked remarkably like pride. After the concert, As Marcus signed autographs and posed for pictures with classmates who had once looked through him, Jessica waited patiently at the edge of the crowd. When the last fan had gotten their photo and the auditorium had mostly cleared, she approached him with hesitant steps. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the sounds of cleanup happening around them. "Could we talk?" He nodded, following her to a quiet corner of the auditorium where they'd once been lab partners in a biology class that felt like a lifetime ago. "I owe you an apology," Jessica began, her words coming in a rush. "What I said to you that day. It was terrible and it was wrong, and I've regretted it every single day since." "Jessica, no, please, let me finish," she interrupted, her dark eyes meeting his with a vulnerability he'd never seen before. "I was scared. Scared of staying in Detroit, scared of not living up to my own expectations, scared of anything that might hold me back from my dreams. But that's no excuse for what I said to you." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the untouchable girl he'd once idolized, but a young woman who had made a mistake and was brave enough to own it. "You know what the funny thing is?" Marcus said gently. "You were right." Jessica's eyes widened in confusion. The Marcus you knew back then, he really wasn't going anywhere. He was too afraid to try, too willing to accept other people's definitions of who he could be. "You didn't reject the person I was meant to become. You rejected the person I was choosing to be, and that rejection forced me to become someone better." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of months of misunderstanding finally lifting. "So," Jessica said with a small smile, "I guess this means I can't get a meet and greet pass?" Marcus laughed, the first genuinely carefree laugh he'd had in months. "I think we can make an exception." As they walked out of the auditorium together, not as the people they'd been, but as the people they were becoming, Marcus realized that the greatest victory wasn't proving Jessica wrong. It was proving himself right about his own unlimited potential. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming too busy building your dreams to remember why you wanted revenge in the first place.